Hello, it's Sonia here with the Pretty Stitch. Welcome to my channel. If this is your first time joining me, I'm so happy to have you here. So today we are going to be doing some knitting, and you can see I have some double pointed needles here. I think they might be a size 6 or 7, I'm not completely sure. But I'm going to be doing a cable knitting tutorial, just a very basic one, and I'm actually doing this. I run a knit and crochet group at my church, and I'm going to be doing a class on how to just do some basic knit cables. I do not consider myself an expert with knitting whatsoever, but I can knit basic cables, and I think I can teach it okay. So I'm just going to demonstrate that. This is mostly for my ladies, but maybe this will be helpful for somebody else. I just use very basic terminology. So if I'm not using correct knitting terms, I apologize. This just makes sense in my brain. So to get started, you will need some knitting needles. So I'm just using these double points. We're just making a little swatch, but you can kind of use whatever knitting needles you like. If you have circulars, straight needles, you know, it doesn't matter. And then of course you're going to need a cable needle to put your cable stitches on. So a cable needle can look like this. So here's one right here. It's just a plastic one. I actually got it. I didn't buy this. I got it for free when I bought yarn from somewhere, and this was the free gift. Some of the other cable needles, they actually look like kind of like a fish hook, like a C. I used to have one like that. I do not know where it is. You don't want to use stitch holders. A lot of people confuse stitch holders with cable knitting needles. They are not the same thing. So I just wanted to put that out there. Now, if you do not have a cable knitting needle, do not despair. If you have more double pointed needles, so here's one here, you can work your cables with this. So I will demonstrate using this tool, and if you're like, I don't have any of these things, but you have some crochet hooks, if you have a straight crochet hook like this, you can use this as well. Now I just suggest, if you're going to go the crochet hook route or the double pointed route, you want your cable, your double pointed needle or your crochet hook to either be the same size or slightly smaller. So this looks to be, I think these are just slightly smaller than this. They're just about the same size. And then this is my crochet hook. It's a 4.25 millimeter hook, or G hook, and it's also about the same size. Now, if you're going to use a crochet hook, it must be straight like this. So you do not want to use, and I have one right here, one that looks like this, will not work. And you also don't want to use one that's a lot thicker, like this guy here, this crazy plastic one. Definitely your cables are going to be misshapen and they're not going to look right. So that is what you need to get started, and you also will need yarn. So here we go. Now I suggest a light colored yarn, especially if you've never done it before, and in a solid color. So this is a light gray. I do not suggest a yarn that looks like this. You know, where it's fun, I love the colors, but your cable stitches will get lost. You will not be able to see them. Plus it's going to be hard to see if you're just starting out. And I also suggest no black, no navy. Again, you can certainly make cables with black, but if you're just learning, it's going to be kind of difficult and be frustrating to use such a dark colored yarn. So to work your cables, you will need to know how to do the basic knit stitch and the basic purl stitch. If you can do those two things, you can do cables. They're not as hard as you might think. Like I said, I am not I don't consider myself a super skilled knitter. I'm okay. I'm okay. But I can do the knit stitch, I can do the purl stitch, and I can do cables just fine. So if you can do those two things, you will not have a problem. So why don't we get started? So we are first going to do a 4-stitch cable pattern. I've already casted on 10 stitches, so we're just making a little swatch here. So you can cast on 10 stitches, however you like to work your cast on. So we're going to be doing what I like to call cable back stitch. So as I said before, this is going to be a 4-stitch cable. So we're going to have border stitches on the edge. So we're going to have 3 border stitches on each edge, and then we're going to have 4 stitches in the middle, which consists of our cable. So to start off with, for row 1, It's going to be a 6-row repeat too. So row 1, we're going to purl the first 3 stitches. And excuse my hands, I have vitiligo, that's why they look spotty. And I've been out in the sun quite a bit, so it always makes it show up more. We're working 3 stitches in purl. So this is part of that 6-row repeat. And there's a whole different ways of, combinations of working cables. This is just a basic one, so you can just get comfortable with the technique. Alright, so now we're going to work 4 knit stitch. And this will be our cable section. And this is row 1 and this is the right side. So all of your odd rows will be the right side of your work. All of the even rows are the wrong side. Alright, so now we are at our last 3 stitches. We are just going to purl those last 3. Okay, so now we have worked our first row, row 1. So now we need to work row 2. Row 2, we're going to work even. So in every knit stitch, you're going to work a knit stitch. Every purl stitch, you're going to work a purl stitch. So our first 3 stitches will be knit. Our 4 stitches in the middle will be purl, and then our last 3 stitches will be knit for row 2. And that will be the same for however many rows you do for this repeat, so every even row will be the same. Okay, so we have completed row 2. So now we're going to work row 3. This is going to be started the cable, and row 3 is a right side. So to begin row 3, we're just going to purl those first 3 stitches. And now we're going to begin the cable. So I like to say cable knit back, or I'm going to demonstrate first with the regular cable needle right here. And so what you want to do is we're going to pull off these first 2 stitches. So you're going to take your cable needle and you're just going to slide them onto this guy. Push them up. And I'm just sliding off 2. I mean, you can work your cable stitch with 3, 4, it depends on the pattern. So I have my 2 stitches on the cable needle. I am going to put them in the back. So that's what I mean, cable knit back. I'm going to bring this forward. And so now we need to knit the next 2 stitches while these guys are just hanging out in the back. So make sure your yarn is in the back. And we're just knitting these 2. So it might seem a little fiddly at first, but once you get the hang of it, it's not too bad. Okay, so we have knitted those 2 stitches. Now we need to go back and knit the ones on our cable needle. And you want to make sure these guys don't slide off. So I'm going to, so here they are on my cable needle. I'm just sliding them to the end. And we're going to knit them off the cable needle. And you can set your cable needle aside, and now we are going to continue with the rest of the row. Rest of row 3 here, we're going to purl the last 3 stitches. So when you're first starting with cabling, it's going to look a little bit of a mess. It's not going to look really nice. So you have to get a couple rows in until the cable starts to pop out. So if you're looking at it right now, it just kind of looks bunchy and weird and you're like, well, that doesn't look right. just hang in there, trust the process, and just get a couple more rows in. Okay, so now we are on a wrong side row. We're just working even. So I have my 3 knit stitches, 4 purl stitches, 3 knit stitches for row 4. Alright, so there's row 4, and we're ready to work rows 5 and 6. So as you can see, still not looking like a whole lot. So row 5, we are going to work even. We're going to work 3 purl stitches, 4 knit stitches, 3 purl stitches. And then row 6 is the same, it's a wrong side row. We're going to just repeat what we did for row 4. And that will be the 6th row repeat. So row 1 is you're just working even across. It's a right side row. Row 2, wrong side row, working even across. Row 3, you're going to work your cable, and then row 4, 5, and 6, you're going to work even. So I'm going to go and work rows 5 and 6, and then we'll do another couple rows, or we'll do another sequence so you can see the cabling again with some of the other tools. Okay, so here's our little swatch. Again, not looking like a whole lot. So I completed our first 6 rows. So as you can see, you're like, what is that? But as I said, trust the process. So let's go back. And so now we need to go back and work our sequence of 6, our repeat here. So rows 1 and 2, we're going to work even. So I'm going to work even across. That's a right side row. Row 2, I'm also going to work even across. And then row 3, I'll be back and we'll do the cabling. And why don't we cable with, when I get to row 3, I'll show you how to cable with the double pointed needle. So I'm going to go off camera, work rows 1 and 2, and then I will be back. Alright, so we're back here. We're ready to work another row 3. So let's start. We're going to do some more cabling. And I'm going to just purl my first 3 stitches, just like we've been doing when we're working on the right side. Okay, so now we are back to our cable section. So we need to do cable knit back. I'm probably not calling it the right way, but that's how it makes sense in my brain. So we're going to call it cable knit back because we put stitches on the back. Alright, so what we're going to do, I'm using my double pointed needle here. We're going to slide off these 2 stitches here onto this double pointed needle. So there's 1, 2, and this needs to go in the back. So that's why I say cable knit back, sticking in the back. So now we got to take this one, put it in the front. So as you can see, my yarn is still in the front from purling. You want to make sure that is in the back, and then you're ready to go. So we're going to knit these 2 stitches, the next 2, while those guys are hanging out in the back. Okay, so we've knit those 2. I'm just going to slide them there. I know I'm sliding off. So now we have to knit these ones off of this double pointed needle. So you're just going to slide it to the other end and then just knit them off. So I'm a big proponent of use what you have. So if you don't want to spend money getting a cable needle, if you've got some double points laying around, they're all about the same size. They work great. Alright, so I'm going to set that guy aside. And now I'm just going to finish up my row by purling the next 3. And your purl stitches, the reason why you're purling next to your cable, it just kind of helps the cable to pop out a little bit more. I have seen patterns where you're cabling and they're knit too. It's more of a subtle look, but if you really want your cables to pop, then you want to have some purl stitches next to it. So now it's looking a little more cable-esque there. So we need to continue with our repeat here. So this was a row 3, so rows 4, 5, and 6 we're going to work even. So I do want to show you how to do cable, how you can cable with crochet hook. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work the rest of this repeat, so rows 4, 5, and 6, and then I'll work rows 1 and 2, and I'll meet you back for another row 3, and we'll use this crochet hook. Alright, so I completed the rest of the second repeat, so now we're in the third repeat, and I've already worked rows 1 and 2, and now we're ready to do the cabling again. So now you can see it's popping out a little bit more now, and I'm going to show you how I use the crochet hook. So as always, we are going to purl the first 3 stitches. Alright, so now we're ready for our cable section. I have my yarn in front, I want to put it in the back. I'm going to grab my crochet hook, and I like to do it where the pointed edge goes in first. I mean, that's how you would use it if you were crocheting, and I am a much better crocheter than knitter. Alright, so let's pull these stitches off. So we have to pull off the first 2. So I'm just going to take my crochet hook and slide them on 1, 2. So they are on the crochet hook. They need to go in the back. So cable knit back. Pull that ahead so they're just hanging out on that crochet hook. And we're going to knit the next 2 stitches. Okay, so now we have to knit these guys off of our crochet hook. So you just slide them to the end, and we're just going to knit those guys. That's why I said you need to use a straight crochet hook so that you can get them off the hook easily. So there's the one. Sorry, that's here. It's blocking your view. And here is the second one, and now we can set this. Now we can set that aside, and we're just going to finish up our row by purling our last 3 stitches. And there we go. So I'm going to work a few more rows. So now I will need to finish up my sequence here. So row 4 is the wrong side row, and then we're going to work even for row 5, and then work row 6, and then I'm just going to keep repeating that 6 row repeat here. So I'll meet you back so you can see it a little bit longer. Okay, so I have worked a few more rows of our repeat, so now you can really see the cable popping out. So that's what I mean, you just have to get a couple rows in, and then you can really see the pretty cable. And this is just one example. And I will show you next how to do what I call cable knit front. And once you know that, if you know holding the needle in the front or in the back, you can make all sorts of different types of cables. Okay, so now we are going to do cable knit front, and I have casted on 10 stitches again, just like we did before. We're going to do the same repeat, but now we're going to put it in the front. So I'm going to work my first 2 rows. So row 1, oops, we're purling the first 3 stitches, and then we'll knit 4 and purl 3. Okay, so that is our row 1. So row 2 is still the wrong side row. So knitting 3, purling 4. Okay, so now we are ready to start some cabling again. So it's the same sequence, but we're going to do cable knit front. Alright, so we are going to purl the first 3 stitches for row 3. Okay, so now we're ready to start some cabling. I'm just going to use the cable needle here. So we're going to pull off 2 stitches because our cables are going to be worked over 4 stitches just like they were in the others. So I'm going to pull off 2 stitches. So 1, 2, and now they're going to hang out in the front of our work. So what we need to do is we're going to knit these two guys. So my yarn is still in the front. I need to put it in the back. Okay, so that's going to hang out in the front. We're going to knit these 2 stitches. And now I need to knit these guys off, so we're just going to slide them to the end and get ready to knit those guys. So this is cable knit front. So depending what you're making, what the pattern says, sometimes you will have the cable needle in the front, sometimes you will have it in the back, and it will just direct your stitches in different directions depending on what the pattern says. And now we just need to finish up the rest of the row by purling the rest of the row here. And so row 3 is complete. So for rows 4, 5, and 6, we're going to work even. So as before, row 4 is a wrong side row, row 5 is a right side row, and row 6 is a wrong side row. And then I'm going to work rows 1 and 2, again even, and then I'll meet you back and we'll cable again so you can see that cable knit front one more time. Okay, so now we are back to a row 3. We're going to do cable knit front. So as before, it's not looking like a whole lot yet. You have to get a couple rows in before that cable really starts to pop out. Alright, so we're going to purl the first 3 stitches here. Okay, so now we're ready to go. I got my cable needle here. I am going to pop off those first 2 stitches onto my cable needle, and they're going to hang out in the front. And we're going to knit the next 2 stitches. So it's just like cable knit back, except we're just putting it in the front. And now we need to knit these guys off of the cable needle. And then just continue with the rest of our row. We're going to purl the rest of the row here. Okay, and then rows 4, 5, and 6 will work even, then 1 and 2 work even. So for this 6 row repeat, we're only cabling on row 3. So some cables patterns you might be cabling, you usually always are only cabling on one side, which would be your right side, and then your wrong side would be the side you just work even. But some rows you would be cabling every other row. It just depends on the pattern that you're making. But I just find it when you're learning, it's just a little easier to do it, you know, every couple rows, like, you know, once in a repeat, just to get the hang of working cables. So I'm going to work a couple more rows so you can see the cable knit front, how that looks, and I will meet you back. Okay, so here we are. I've worked a couple more rows of cable knit front, so you can definitely see the cable popping out there. And so here is the other one we did of cable knit back. So you can see by working in the front, the cable is going towards the left, and by working in the back, the cable is going towards the right. And sometimes when you're doing cables, you might actually do cable knit, cable front all within the same pattern. So this is a very basic one, so we just did all cable back for this one, and then we did all cable front for this one. But there can be some projects where within the same pattern you might be cabling front, you might be cabling back. It just depends on what the designer wants. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please like and subscribe, and thank you so much for watching.